We'll give everybody about 10 more minutes to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. We'll give everybody just a few more minutes to get in, get their Zoom launch update, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. This is our third Wednesday of the month, Community Emergency Response Team Continuing Education Training. Tonight's topic is going to be on what to do after the earth stops shaking. One of the things that we do a lot is talk about preparedness. We talk about how to be ready for a disaster, the training that you take, um, the steps that lead up to the disaster, but oftentimes we don't focus much on what to do after or during the disaster. And I think that is a disservice to people because, yes, why we prepare is so that we're ready for when it happens, but it takes a lot of thinking to really line up what happens next. And there's certain pitfalls and certain steps that should be done in sequence after the earthquake occurs or other disaster. So it's really important to talk about the immediate and then the next hour and the next few hours, the next day and the next few days right after the earthquake, because there's a lot of different things that will happen as we've seen in recent disasters. One of the things that we talk about a lot in Southern California is the earthquake, the big one. And the reason for that is really that if you're prepared for an earthquake, you're prepared for pretty much any other kind of disaster. Um, the results of an earthquake are going to be many and similar to other disasters, be it hurricanes, tornadoes, uh, blizzards, um, things that we don't have maybe in California, but happen around the world. First and foremost, of course, we think about structural damages or collapses of buildings after or during the earthquake. And I say after because sometimes we have damage that occurs during the earthquake that causes a chain reaction. The building is severely or suffers major damage and is in the process of collapsing but hasn't collapsed yet. Additionally, there is almost certainly going to be infrastructure damage, outages, failures caused by the earthquake or other kinds of disasters. And we see this every time and time again where cell phones are the first things to go out. Power is the first things to go out. In the case of an earthquake, natural gas, gas lines will rupture. Gas lines inside the building, gas lines leading up to the building. And if those are not mitigated, the resulting fires can actually burn down buildings. Water lines. Water lines in Southern California run parallel to the sewage lines. And if you think that if the street suffers a kind of shifting, it's going to break both the sewage and the water lines, resulting in contamination of the fresh water and possibly even draining out the water from a building. Internet almost certainly was going to go down if you have cable or um, maybe if you have fiber, you might still have internet for a little bit, but almost certainly shortly after the earthquake, you're going to lose internet access. And cell phones are, if the earthquake doesn't actually cause damage to the cell towers and the power, everyone is going to be getting on their cell phones right in the next few minutes, calling people, checking in, and it's going to overwhelm the system, causing outages just by oversaturation of the cell phone networks. Fires are going to be inevitable. And these are not just earthquakes, but fires. Entire towns, entire cities have burned down just because of a cow kicking over a lantern in a barn. Um, we don't tend to think of it for a major city because there's a lot of concrete, cement, glass that should not burn. But if a building does catch on fire, or when a building does catch on fire, the amount of heat put out by that fire will cause things to melt, will spread to other buildings if they're not mitigated. And if you don't have the fire department able to put water on it immediately, one building fire will lead to a second building fire, which will lead to a third, fourth, fifth, till the entire block is on fire. And that will just spread quite rapidly. Explosions, those gas lines I mentioned, once fire gets close to that, those gas lines, leaking gas, natural gas will catch fire and possibly explode. Um, a lot of times, right after an earthquake, there will be landslides and sinkholes. Think the water lines running underneath the street. It's going to cause saturation of the ground and especially if there's been shifting, cause a void to create underneath the ground, which will result in a sinkhole. And if you're driving on those streets, your car may end up going down. We've seen sinkholes that are 20, 30 feet deep. And that's not only a danger to people driving on there, but people trying to get out, people trying to evacuate now can't get out because of damage to the infrastructure to the roads. Tsunamis are a major problem along the coastline. The Alaska quake, I think almost 100 years ago, resulted in a tsunami that hit California and caused death on the coast. And if you have an earthquake that's in the ocean, it can definitely cause a tsunami that can be 10, 20, 30 feet high, maybe even more, and destroy homes that are significantly inland on the coast. So tsunamis are a major concern, even if the earthquake itself doesn't do damage to the infrastructure, that tsunami can wipe out entire islands. Flooding, again, that's going to be the result of water lines breaking, sewage lines breaking, but um, also after the fact. If we look at the fires that happened in Altadena and in the Palisades, in other areas, La Jolla, Paradise, the resulting rains after that caused uh, flooding, and you no longer had the infrastructure to hold back that water. Certainly, an earthquake causing landslides will destroy the trees that hold the water back, and it'll be significantly worse on the next rains. And then things to think about are when the earth moves and buildings shift and there's partial collapses, you're going to have debris that gets thrown up into the air. One of the interesting things is there was actually a fungal spore outbreak after the Northridge quake, I believe in the Studio City area, that injured hundreds of people. I forget if it killed anybody. I believe it did. But this is fungus that grows underground and suddenly gets thrown up into the air. Additionally, when you have buildings collapse, you have concrete, glass, steel, asbestos, all sorts of really toxic materials that get thrown up into the air. It's very critical to take care of yourself and protect yourself with an N95 mask so you don't breathe that stuff in. Otherwise, the result could be um, injuries not only immediately, but years down the road. And one thing that we always talk about are the first responders that are going to be responding to this earthquake or other disaster. They're going to be immediately inundated with calls um, within minutes, if not seconds, of the earthquake happening. 911 is going to be inundated and overloaded, and all the resources will be committed immediately to deal with the most critical incidents. Now, I also want to focus on the fact that you don't want the first responders uh, uh, responding to you because they're going to be triaging, they're going to be prioritizing. And if the fire department or EMS arrives, it's because you are in a severe um, situation, either trapped or severely injured, and um, that's probably the worst case scenario is that you actually do need to go to the hospital and that you are such a high priority that they are going to be coming to you. So that's one of the things we want to mitigate and deal with are minor injuries so that we don't have to go to the hospital. We don't have to tie up those resources and we don't need to then have to recover from those injuries. A major earthquake, I think, is given and assumed will be destructive, and unfortunately, people will die. However, modern construction is very resilient to earthquakes. They're designed to move with the earth. They're designed to sway, to bend, or maybe not bend, but sway, um, and not break. Most buildings will not collapse. You have older buildings pre-1937 construction that are brick and mason and might be reinforced, but have a much higher chance of collapsing just because they were not designed to move with the earth. Wooden construction, if you're in a wooden house, townhome, condo, the building itself will sway and not absorb the full impact of the earthquake and then collapse. Skyscrapers, modern construction, high-rise buildings are designed to really move. They're on rollers. They're designed to um, really dissipate that impact from the quake. And if you're in, say, a skyscraper in downtown LA, and it's on a particularly windy day, you can feel the building swaying underneath you and actually you can get motion sickness. In addition to most buildings not collapsing, of course, most people will survive the earthquake. I talk to people all the time at outreach booths and ask them what their plan is to for the earthquake. And people tell me that they're just going to die. And the reality is, no, you're probably not. Um, Chances are you are going to survive the earthquake. 99.999% of people will survive the earthquake. But if you're injured, or you don't have contingency plans, you don't have supplies, the next several days will be very difficult, much more difficult than if you were prepared. In addition, people who do prepare and take decisive action immediately after the earthquake will recover a lot faster um, and recover better. It certainly will be expensive to repair damage, replace things that have been destroyed in the earthquake. And if you've done things like bolt TVs to the wall, bolt appliances to the wall, have latches on your drawers and your cabinets that prevent them from dumping out all over the kitchen floor, your cleanup is going to be much faster if you've taken those actions, those steps. Might even save you from having a bunch of broken dishes and have to replace all of those. Certainly, if a refrigerator falls over, it's going to take some damage and may need to be replaced. And certainly, you're going to lose all the food in there too. It is important to note that the amount of damage and severity from that earthquake is going to be really dependent upon how close you are to the epicenter and also how deep it is. If an earthquake is close to the surface of it- close to the surface, it's going to cause more severe shaking than if it's deeper down, miles deep underground. Um, I'm about 25 miles away from Northridge, where the Northridge quake epicenter was, and we lost power here. Things fell off the walls, but we didn't have any structural damage. Things were pretty minimal. But at the same time, there was a quake less than a mile away from me, and it was a 4.0, and that was a really good jolt. That felt much more than a 4.0 I would have expected it to be. So if you were right on top of that earthquake, it's going to be a lot worse than if it is on the other side of the city. But that's not to say we even know what an 8.0, 9.0 will feel like. Something that severe, and sh if it's shallow, will travel for hundreds of miles and cause severe damage everywhere. So we really can't predict how bad the earthquake is going to be, but we can plan for it. And we don't necessarily need to plan for catastrophic failure of our building. We just need to plan for what we're going to do in the first 72 hours, first week, certainly the first few hours after the earthquake. Worst case scenario is you are right on top of that epicenter and your building does collapse on top of you. But the reality is that's not going to be 99.99% of us. Um, Another thing is how long does the shaking last for? The Northridge quake lasted 8 seconds. Also, how many aftershocks there were and the severity of those. There were 3,000 aftershocks in the following 3 weeks after the Northridge quake. The Ridgecrest quake, which was more recent and a more significant shake than Northridge, lasted reports of 30 seconds of shaking. Um, and they had 3,000 plus aftershocks in the next few hours after that quake. Um, and actually, there was a significant shake before on the 4th of July, or was it 3rd of July? There was a significant shake that we felt in Los Angeles, and that was actually a foreshock to the Ridgecrest quake, the actual quake. So you might get a little bit of warning, um, but it seems like what we're seeing now is that these quakes have significantly more aftershocks after, and most won't be felt. But if you're already distressed by the initial quake, having thousands of aftershocks in the next few days, every single time you feel the earth start to move, even if it's minor, you're going to be holding your breath and hoping it's not a worse quake than what you already experienced. And if you have kids, and this is their first time, you can imagine the panic they're going to be going through every single aftershock that they feel. And if we're talking about hundreds in a day, that's a lot that they're going to be going through. The saying is that hope is not a plan, but also death and giving up is not a plan. You can't expect to die. You can't expect to give up and not have to deal with it. The reality is you will have to deal with it. Once that quake happens, and over the next few hours, next few days, there's going to be cleanup. There's going to be recovery. And the better you plan for it, the better you prepare for it, the better you're going to, and easier it's going to be to make it through it because you're going to have to. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions on what to do during a quake. We hear all the time to go stand underneath in a doorway. Well, that comes from um, very old construction, the Adobe homes that used to be in California pre-modern era, and after the earthquake, the heavier duty outside door frame was the only thing standing after the home collapsed. And so people thought, oh, that must be the safest place to be is in that doorway. Well, modern construction no longer reinforces the doorway in such a way. And so you're standing there and things can accelerate very rapidly. They will accelerate very rapidly. And you're more likely to get hit by the door and injured by the door than you are to be safe underneath the doorway and not have things collapse on top of you. So definitely don't do that. Also, don't try and run. The instinct is I need to get to somewhere safe, but a lot of the injuries actually occur while people are trying to move and get away and get somewhere. A lot of the injuries occur within a few feet of where someone was when the earthquake started. And so the best thing you can do is if you're at a desk or table or something, get underneath it and hold on. You want to hold on because you don't want to go flying out from there. You also don't want the table, whatever cover you're under, from moving away from you. If you can't, if there's nothing around, it's best to get on the ground before you're thrown on the ground. Get on the ground and cover your head and neck with your hands. And then the saying is duck, cover, and hold. You want to prevent things from hurting you if they land on top of you. Getting hit in the head, getting hit in the back of the neck can be severely um, debilitating if you have a neck injury or head injury. And certainly dealing with a cut on your head, which is going to bleed severely, is not going to be a fun thing to do while you're trying to recover from the earthquake. Additionally, if you have to, get next to something that's stable, an inside wall. If you're in bed, and you can roll out of bed and get next to the bed and underneath it, or not necessarily underneath it, but next to it. So if something does fall on top of the bed, it'll hit the bed and hopefully not hit you, if you're sheltered by the bed itself. And one thing you want to do is the instinct is to go run and be with your kids and protect them from the earthquake. But again, if you're trying to run, you're going to get thrown to the ground or into a wall or something and get injured. And it's best to shout, yell, tell your family members to duck, cover, and hold and protect themselves until the shaking stops. And then you can go check on them. One of the other things that I hear all the time are people saying they're going to run outside. And that is probably the worst thing you could do, especially if you're in, say, downtown LA with a lot of high-rise buildings and a lot of old buildings. What will happen is the outside, the facades of the building, the there will be glass, there will be marble, there will be all sorts of things that will come off the building and go flying. And things on the building can get thrown 1.5 times the height of the building. So if you're in a street surrounded by high-rise buildings, that is probably one of the worst places you can be. You want to get inside. You want to get inside and protected from that. That is where you probably do want to run. If you are outside in the open and there's a bunch of high-rise buildings around you, if you're maybe in the street and there's single family homes, it might be a lot safer. And you don't necessarily need to run to get inside. But depending on where you are, that could actually be extremely dangerous. Additionally, you don't want to try and stop things from falling. Things will get thrown, things will get accelerated and thrown across the room. And if you try and stop them, you're likely to get injured. Things falling instead of falling and breaking, things falling and hitting you, that's how injuries happen. And again, we don't want injuries because we don't want to have to go to the hospital because that is where everyone else is going to be. And we don't want to add to that mess, but also we don't want to have to be there. Now, what you're going to do in the first few minutes of an earthquake, after the earthquake, after the earth stops shaking, um, check yourself for injuries. If you are injured, your adrenaline's already pumping, your heart rate is up, you're on the verge of panic, your adrenaline is flowing, and it can actually mask pain. If you've been injured, you might not realize it. So check yourself, take those first few seconds, breathe, hold on, and try and calm down as you assess yourself and see how bad it is. Yes, if you have a family, if you have young kids, the instinct is going to be go to them. But check yourself first because if you're injured, it may actually be worse to move immediately instead of dealing with that. Secondly, you don't want to go running down the hall. Things will have been thrown across. If you have glass picture frames on the walls, they're no longer on the wall. They're probably on the ground. The glass is probably broken. The number one injury from the Northridge quake was cut up feet. And so if you're going to go run down the hall to check on your kids, you could actually severely injure yourself and make it much more difficult to deal with the next few hours, next few days with cut up feet. So put on closed-toed shoes. Have them in your bedroom. Have them, close at hand wherever you are, because that's going to save you from injury. And then yell at your family to have them stay with it where they are because the kids who are panicking might be running towards you, might be running towards their parents and running down that same hall with the broken glass and may get cut up themselves. And that's one thing you want to avoid is having to take care of your children who are now injured. Finally, then, step three is go check on your family. Check for injuries. Check on your home. Check for damage. See how bad this was. The hope is that you're not in a building that's been severely damaged. Hopefully, things that are broken and damaged are minor and can be quickly cleaned up, and you haven't had the worst case scenario, which is your building's about to collapse. But you want to find out if it is. If you start to see severe damage, now you need to reassess whether or not it's safe to be in there. And if it's not, start to make plans to evacuate. Like I said, chances are the building won't collapse during the earthquake, but may collapse after. And fourth, communicate with your neighbors. Turn on your FRS radio or local two-way radio. Turn to the channel for your neighborhood. Start to monitor. If you start to hear people asking for help or saying that there's injuries, damage, then you know this was a severe quake and you might have to do something about it. But if everyone is reporting that everyone's fine, no injuries, or no one's on the channel at all, then someone on the next doorpost said that they're just going to roll over and go to bed. And yeah, if it's just a quick jolt, minor shake, and it happens at night, yeah, roll over, go to bed. That's a good option. But if it's more severe than that, you do need to get up and actually find out, make sure there's no damage that might be leading to something worse. So going back to the question, do we evacuate or shelter in place? The preference is always going to be shelter in place. You want your home to be safe enough that you can stay there because getting on the road and dealing with other people evacuating is going to be a nightmare. Um, Traffic, if everyone is trying to leave at the same time, no one is going anywhere. People will panic. They will try and get around. Depending on the desperation, they will hit other cars and cause even more severe traffic jams just because they're trying to get out um, and disregarding other people. Um, Also, people don't think during a disaster. They're panicking, and so they will cause more chaos because of that. So you want to avoid having to evacuate, but at the same time, if you have to evacuate, you have to evacuate. There's a question about how to know which channel you're on. That goes to talking to your neighbors ahead of time, pre-plan. It's not the time to figure out what channel everyone is on after the earthquake. This is something you have to do beforehand. In terms of structural damage, we categorize in threes, minor, moderate, and heavy damage. Minor is going to be superficial cracks, the paint, stucco. Windows could be cracked or broken. Moderate, you're going to see a lot of cracks. There might be more damage to interior contents. If things have been thrown around, you have appliances that have been thrown around and things are just everywhere. That's the sign of a severe shake and possibly a moderate damage to the building. Heavy damage is categorized by a partial or total collapse, tilting of the structure. If you see two cracks that intersect and form an X, that means that the structure has been compromised and is no longer safe to be in there, and will eventually collapse. It is in the process of collapsing, it just hasn't collapsed yet. And what may happen is that an aftershock could cause the building to finish collapsing, hopefully without you being in it. It's important to have go bags near your main exit. If you do need to evacuate in a hurry, you don't want to have to go look for them. Have them by the door, have them maybe in a closet next to the door, but someplace where everyone can grab them and go. Um, don't, if you see that your building has heavy structural damage, don't spend time in there that you may not have. Again, there will be hundreds of aftershocks within the first day, and those aftershocks may cause the building to collapse. So grab what you need and get out of there. Reevaluate later. Maybe it is safe to go back in, but if you think you need to evacuate because the building is unsafe to be in there, you don't want to be looking for those bags. Um, if it is, there's moderate damage and you want to err on this side of caution, grab important documents and items, um, get your vehicle packed in case you do need to evacuate, plan on what you're going to do. Maybe this is a force shock and the next shock is going to actually do some heavy damage and you now need to get out of there immediately. That's in the first few minutes after a quake. After the first hour, or during the first hour, you're going to really want to do a complete damage assessment of your home. If you don't see obvious signs of damage in the first few minutes, um, start taking time, looking, see are appliances thrown around, if a stove gets thrown out from the wall and you have a gas line, that gas line might be ruptured, might be broken. Again, refrigerator might get thrown, TVs off the walls. Look to see also washer and dryer. Those have possibly have gas lines as well. or appliances might have electrical lines that have broken. Those are the things you need to be concerned about because um, those utilities might not be off. If the gas is ruptured, you might not realize you have a leak. If your gas line doesn't have an automatic shutoff, then you might have gas leaking into your house. And the gas building up inside, that's when things explode and things catch fire. Um, those utilities do have shutoffs usually at the wall. And if you do just have say the stove has been thrown and ruptured the gas line there, you can turn the gas off, check the other appliances, and you might be safe. Um, water. Other things you want to do is look for things that are dangerous. Say if a flower pot or frames have been thrown and there's now sharp, broken glass in places that your kids can get to. Those are things you want to prioritize mitigating. Dealing with the stuff that's not dangerous can get cleaned up later. But also then you want to consider your utilities. Prioritize keeping your water protected. Again, water lines run parallel to the sewage lines, and chances are they will be ruptured. You might have contaminated water coming into the building. If you have a water heater, say a 50-gallon, 40-gallon water tank, that's clean drinking water that you want to protect. Additionally, if there's a break outside, it can actually drain the water out of your water heater and out of your walls. So you want to shut off the water coming into the building to preserve what you have in there because you might rely on that and be able to use that to drink over the next few days. Power, the power grid or power system is often self-healing. What'll happen is when a surge happens and it pops a circuit breaker to a larger area, it may try and come back on, and you'll have surges of power coming in. So you want to make sure that if the power's out, turn off your power. Small breakers first, then the large breaker, so that when those surges come on, and it will only be a couple minutes before they start coming back on, you want to protect your appliances because um, a surge can actually cause a light bulb to explode. And if you have a gas leak and a light bulb explodes, that's how fires happen. If the earthquake was not severe enough to trigger an automatic gas shutoff or you don't have one, you really only want to turn your gas off if you suspect a leak. And that's if you see, smell, or hear it. If you see wavy lines, that's indicating a gas leak, or you see the gauge or the dial on the gas meter spinning, that means that there's probably a gas leak. Natural gas does not have any scent. They inject a smell of rotten eggs into it. And so if you smell gas, that's when you also want to turn your gas off. If you hear a high-pitched hissing sound, that's a sign of gas leak, and that's the other indication to turn off the gas. Hopefully you've turned on your radios, you're monitoring, you've done your assessment now, you've checked for injuries, you've checked for damage. Report in. Let your neighbors know if there's no damage, no injuries, or if you have things thrown around, windows broken out, gas lines ruptured. The more information, the better. Because if you do start hearing that there are a lot of injuries, a lot of damage, and you're inclined to help your neighbors, chances are you will have neighbors that need help. Determine if you're going to need to deploy as a CERT team. If you have do something like you ready your LA neighborhood or map your neighborhood, checking in at the neighborhood gathering site, share information is also going to be important. Organizing a quick response to go check on maybe elderly people, people who are have mobility challenges, are on oxygen or other um, supportive aids. Um, If this is during the day and there's latchkey kids that are home, but their parents are at work, going and checking on them is also going to be important. Also, um, take the time to gather supplies and your go bags, make sure they're ready to go. Because again, if this is a force shock and you have something more severe after that, having that stuff prepared, ready to go. And again, we're talking about most people are not prepared. So now's the time to really get that stuff together if you're not already ready to go and make sure that you can evacuate quickly if you need to. You really want to prioritize food, water, and power. Um, and there's no particular order here. But chances are, water is not going to be safe to drink. Power is going to be out, and without electricity, the food in your refrigerator is not going to be safe to eat for very long. Certainly, um, supermarkets are going to be empty. You won't be able to use a credit card. You won't be able to get gas at the gas station. It is not going to be a good time for people in the next few hours following a major shake, possibly days. So, this does run a little counter to that direction I gave, which is shut off the water to your house. But you may still have water pressure for a little bit, and filling up a bathtub sink, filling buckets with water that you can purify later, may be a good idea. Chances are you won't be the only one doing it. And chances are everyone doing it will cause a complete collapse of the water system. This is human nature. It is inevitable. But would you rather be prepared and be a little selfish, be a little self-reliant, and have those additional resources, or not do that and then not be able to utilize those resources later? We're talking about how you can survive the best. Um, but chances are that water system will fail. And if you can get a chance to get some of that, that's a good thing. Um, Avoid flushing toilets because there's actually water in the tank that is, assuming you haven't put anything into it, that's safe to drink. And when you flush it, that water won't refill because the water doesn't work or the water system has failed. You're not going to be able to use that water later. Um, there's pluses and minuses to not flushing the toilet as well, certainly. You do want to assume that any water you do get out of the system is going to be contaminated. You're going to need to boil it or filter it in some way. If you have a reverse osmosis system, that is going to take care of a lot of the contaminants. Not everything, but generally speaking, it is assumed, at least from the research I've done, that a reverse osmosis system is going to be safe to drink after an earthquake. But those tend to be a sink system, a spigot that's coming out, not the actual water coming out of the sink, but only the water coming out of that RO system. And then, of course, after you've done what you can, turn the water off to protect what you have in your hot water heater inside the walls. There's water in the walls. Um, and if you open a faucet at the top of the building, if you're, say, in a multi-story building, go to a sink or shower on the top floor, open up the valves. Not much water is going to come out of that, especially if the water lines have been shut off from the coming into the building. But now you have the ability to use the sinks on lower levels to get water out. You don't want to waste it. So use that to drink or maybe possibly clean injuries if you need to, but save that water, preserve that water. We can assume the power is going to be out for at least a day, maybe longer. Um, the food in your refrigerator will go bad with no power. Um, Raw food will go bad faster than cooked food will. So if you have raw chicken, beef, pork, meat in general, you probably want to cook it as quickly as possible. And that cooked food will last longer than the raw food will, and certainly be a little bit safer to eat. Um, you probably don't have natural gas. You probably don't have electricity, so you're going to be relying on a barbecue or a portable grill, maybe a butane camping stove, something like that. And if you don't have one, you don't have those are things that might be worthwhile investments to get because being able to cook food, heat water, boil water is going to be a lifesaver. And certainly it's going to make things a lot more comfortable than having to eat cold food um, out of a can. Additionally, if you have coolers, there's some coolers that can keep ice for days. And you have ice packs in the freezer, dumping those into a cooler, pulling the food, the most critical food that you want to save and put them in a cooler can actually preserve them for at least hours, if not a couple of days. You also want to minimize opening that freezer. That freezer is going to keep things cold, maybe not frozen, but cold for some amount of time. And what's interesting about a freezer is the more full it is, the more stuffed it is, the longer it will stay cold. I recommend putting, if you have a space, put cold packs in there, ice packs in there. And that way you have those available taking up space, but they'll either keep the freezer cold or you can put them in the cooler, and utilize them, when the power's out. One thing we see all the time, especially in drills, is that people will use their cell phones as flashlights. Um, the cell phone networks are probably going to be down, but may come back up. Or you might be able to get Wi-Fi, or you might have other options available to you. That cell phone is a line of communication that you don't want to let die on you. Using that flashlight on your cell phone or using your cell phone as a flashlight will drain the battery very quickly. I recommend you don't do that. If you need to communicate, um, having your cell phone is going to be essential for that. Having maps on your cell phone. GPS is still going to function after the earthquake. And being able to navigate with your cell phone is going to be much more important than using it as a flashlight. So I recommend that you actually have real flashlights. Have them in your go bags. I carry one on me. Um, at all times because I want to use a real flashlight and not my cell phone. Certainly, if you need to use your cell phone for last ditch effort because it is pitch black and that's your only option, that is your only option. But try and give yourself more than one option. After the first hour, the next few hours are going to be focused on stability, stabilizing, mitigating the damage, mitigating things that will injure the rest of your family or you. You want to make sure that you have long pants, an N95 mask. The air in your home is probably not going to be the safest thing to breathe. There will be dust, there will be particles in the air that you don't want to breathe. Um, for the vegans out there, I apologize. Leather gloves are better than synthetic. Things that are hot will melt plastic. They will melt synthetic material at much lower temperatures than they will melt and damage leather. So the thick leather gloves, the cheap ones that you can buy at Home Depot for $1 each, that are thick leather that don't fit very well, those are going to be much better to use picking up sharp debris than synthetic material, which may not stand up as well um, as the leather gloves do. That's my recommendation. If you pick something up with plastic gloves and they melt to your skin, that's going to be a problem. Most injuries happen in two particular time frames. One during the earthquake, and one about an hour later when people start to clean up. And again, you don't want to get injured. You don't want to have to go to the hospital. Focus on identifying any damage to your home, damage to gas lines, water lines, damage to electrical cables. If something's been ripped out of the wall and the cable's still in there and there's now loose wires and the power comes on, it can cause a spark. It can cause a fire. Unplug things that have been damaged. Shut off valves for things that no longer have lines connected to them. This is where things get bad hours or days later is when there are utilities that are still on but damaged and now are leaking and possibly causing a fire or explosion or flooding. Water from a damaged water line will definitely cause flooding, and we've seen that time and time again. Um, while I'm saying focus on the sharp debris and the mitigating damage, you also want to make sure that pathways are clear to an exit. If you need to evacuate quickly, you don't want to be tripping over stuff or jumping over things or hoping that you don't step on something sharp and painful as you're trying to get out of there quickly. Children, give them something to do. Especially if they've never been in an earthquake before, this is going to be traumatizing to them. Every aftershock that happens, and even for adults, um, you're going to be holding your breath. But for the children, they're going to be screaming. They're going to be scared out of their minds. Give them something to do to keep them occupied. Do not give them your cell phone and have them play games on your cell phone because you want to keep that thing charged. If they have an iPad or a deck of cards or something that they can do, put them to work, maybe helping clean up in a safe manner so that they don't get injured. But give them something to get their minds off the earthquake. If you're going to volunteer with your neighbors, doing something like Map Your Neighborhood or Ready Your LA Neighborhood, you're probably going to go door to door along the block and make sure that you're helping as many people in case they've been injured or need help or are alone, scared, turn off their gas if they need that to it's actually self-interest. You don't want their house catching fire and then setting your house on fire. So you want to help your neighbors through this as much as you want to help your own family. Um, and it's optional. If you're a single parent and you have kids, stay with your kids. But if there's two of you and one wants to go help, while one stays with the family, that's a good thing. If things are really bad and you're going to set up a CERT staging area and you're going to help more neighbors in the surrounding blocks, that is also, this is the time to do this. After the first hour, after you've mitigated and made safe your own home and your own family, that's when you can start to consider helping others. Um, but if you are worried about your own home and your own family, you're going to put yourself at risk if you go help others. It's better to stay at home and stabilize your own situation first before you help others. During that first day, after the first few hours, again, you really don't want to go to the store. Um, Everyone else is going to be going to the store. Everyone else is going to be trying to get as many resources as they can because they're panicking. And this is where people will get into fights. People will get into accidents. Bad things will happen out there that you don't need to be a part of. Um, but this only works if you're prepared. If you don't even have 3 days worth of food and water, you're gonna be in a situation where you have no other choice but to try and get resources and go to the store or go to your neighbors or somewhere else. So really that 3 day mark, the 72 hours is really an important number to think about in terms of making sure you can be on your own without power, without gas, without water for at least 3 days. During the course of that first day, you're going to be constantly reassessing your home for any new damage. The aftershocks may cause additional damage, but also if your home has been damaged more moderate or severely than you initially knew, you're going to see that damage start to surface over time, over the next few hours. And you might see new damage a few hours after the earthquake that you didn't notice before. And that's an indication that there's a problem and you need to really reassess whether or not it's safe to stay in that home. If you're not able to shelter inside, either there's concerns as moderate damage or severe damage, heavy damage to a building, plan where you're going to sleep. Um, are you going to camp out in your backyard? Can you be in the driveway? Are you going to be in your car? Are you going to go somewhere else? The first few hours today after the earthquake is when you're going to have to figure this out. You're going to have to figure out where you're going. You and your family are going to spend the night. Um, and if you are camping, which is definitely a viable option, and you can, make sure you set up the tents and camping gear before it gets dark. Once it gets dark and there's no power, things get very dark very fast. And now you have to figure out how you're going to light up. And if you only have your cell phones, you're going to drain your batteries real fast. Same thing with flashlights. Flashlights only good for so long on battery. So you want to maximize daylight as much as possible to get things prepared so that when the sun goes down and it gets dark, now um, you're already prepared for whatever needs to happen. And you can go to bed and hopefully have a much better morning. Um, um, Additionally, you want to plan how to deal with waste. It's not something that anybody really wants to talk about, but it is something that everybody needs to deal with. And you don't want to not have a plan for this. Um, where are you going to go to the bathroom? How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to make that not become a problem later on? How are you going to get rid of the waste? Are you going to bury it? Are you going to use there's options, cat litter, in a bag. It's exactly what you do with your cat. That cat litter absorbs moisture and clumps together, and then you can and put that in a trash bag, and it mitigates the waste. Now you're still gonna have to get rid of it at some point. Um, but if we're talking about weeks now, you're going to have a buildup of this that's going to become a problem sooner than later. Um, the other thing I want to stress is that you do not want to overexert yourself during the first day. Focus on stability and reassuring your family, calming nerves. Deal with the big stuff, the stuff that's dangerous, the stuff that is going to become a problem. But the rest of the mess will still be there tomorrow or a few days from now. And if you burn yourself out trying to clean up and do too much, it puts yourself at risk. Because again, in that first um, 24 hours after an earthquake, that's the highest chance of a severe aftershock or possibly a more significant quake. And so you want to preserve energy, preserve resources, and not burn yourself out trying to do everything at once in the first few hours. During the next week, now you're focusing on returning to normality. Chances of the severe aftershocks have gone down. Chances of this being a foreshock has gone down. Hopefully power gets restored. Natural gas. Gas company's going to have to come turn your gas back on. That's going to take some time. Days, possibly weeks. Water, especially if there's been damage to the water infrastructure, may take a while to come back. Um, Focus on cleaning up the mess, but Have a plan. Deal with it methodically. The more you plan, the more you have some order in your life, the more calming it's going to be. If you're looking at something and it is just you have bookshelves that have dumped all over the floor, it can be overwhelming. But if you go, okay, I'm going to deal with one bookshelf today. I'm going to deal with the next bookshelf tomorrow, and then the third bookshelf the day after that. Or I'm gonna, clean up half my kitchen now, get rid of the glass and broken stuff, and then deal with the other things. Have that plan to help calm your mind and put together some order so that you can get through this. Because you will have to get through this. But if it's overwhelming and you shut down because it's just too much, then it's going to just take that much longer to get through it. And having a plan and dealing with things methodically will get you through it faster and calmer. Um, don't forget to take pictures. If you have earthquake insurance, and you need to make a claim, having those pictures are going to be there, important for that claim. During that next week, stay close to the younger children, stay close to your children, your family. Being together is going to help everybody get through this. Certainly, you don't want to leave younger children alone. If you need to spend time with your children, cleaning up can come later. It's better that they're kept calm and relaxed and reassured than you going off and burning yourself out, taking care of things that will still be there in the coming days while your children are going through this trauma. If you do have to evacuate, you can't stay in your home. Focus on hygiene, food, and water. Um, if you can heat up food, it's comforting. If you run out of water, it can be deadly. If you don't deal with the waste, you don't clean, you don't clean injuries, you don't bathe in some fashion, um, biological waste will attract insects, animals, and invite disease. And that's certainly what you don't want to have happen is get sick because you didn't deal with this stuff and prevent it. Um, there are things like waterless baths or showers. There's towels you can use. If you can't take a shower, but you can at least wipe yourself, um, take care of sweat, dirt. Um, I personally do not like um, alcohol-based hand sanitizer. It dries out your skin, and the teaching is that it's used in a pinch if you don't have another way to clean your hands. Um, but you need to use soap and water as quickly as possible. They do have waterless soap, but also think about using water to get that stuff off your hands. If your hands are dirty and you use something like hand sanitizer or waterless soap, that stuff is still on your hands, even if it's disinfected. Um, you can use water that's not safe to drink to clean. If there's water from a swimming pool, you can use that to bathe in or to wash things. It's just not safe to drink it. Help will be coming. Supply points, points of distribution for supplies, water, food, rations, toilet paper, stuff like that will be coming, but it's likely to take days for it to get here. Certainly at least a day. There will be, if you're in Southern California and there's 10 million of us here at least. I forget the exact numbers. That's a lot of people to get supplies to. It's going to take time. And so you really want to focus on taking care of yourself and your family so you don't become desperate. Having those resources, at least 72 hours of food and water, so that you can wait for the supply distribution points to be set up. You don't want to be the first person in line at that because it will be chaotic. The people who are desperate are going to do everything they can to get those supplies that they desperately need. And if you can avoid it because you're prepared, you're going to be that much better off. Um, Talk briefly about a go bag. There's also things called stay-at-home kits. In a go bag, that's what you really want to have next to the door so you can grab it and go. Everyone in your family should have one. Pets, if you have dogs, cats, they should have one. Um, but really, you need to prioritize mobility. If you have a 50-pound pack with everything and the kitchen sink, how far are you going to be able to walk with that? Now, if you're an avid hiker and you do, 50-pound packs all the time, great. But if you can't walk a mile with your pack, it's useless. So prioritize efficiency, prioritize things that can be used for multiple purposes so you don't have to have too much. Practice with it, walk around the block, walk a mile. See if you can carry this comfortably for a long period of time. You might not be able to drive out of here. You might have to walk. Um, Focus on having at least 3 days worth of stuff in the bag so you can make it those 72 hours without needing additional things. Have water in there. Water's heavy. If you're thinking a gallon of water, um, per person per day, that's 8 pounds per day. And that's, 8 pounds per gallon of water times three per person. That's a lot. So having things like water filtration, water filter. So you can get water that's not necessarily safe to drink and filter it through so it becomes usable. Um, Coast Guard rations, I like those over MREs or energy bars. Um, these tend to have about a 5-year lifespan, same with emergency water, but they're temperature insensitive. If you think about how hot and cold things are in Southern California and certainly other places like Arizona, it can get to hundred something, 120, 150 degrees in your car without AC during the day, especially during a heat wave. That destroys things like meals ready to eat, MREs. But the Coast Guard rations are designed to be in lifeboats. They're designed to be in high and low temperature and not lose stability, lose calories. Plus, they're very compact and very calorie dense. They might not be the best thing to eat, but when you're having to leave and hike somewhere, having those calories are going to be important and not taking up too much weight. Have at least one change of clothes, underwear, socks. Um, it's going to be so much better if you can change your clothes and feel clean than if you're in your same clothes, sweating in it, being dirty for 3 days. You just won't feel good. Plus, it's not the most sanitary thing either. Battery backup for your phones. Again, your phone is going to be a lifeline when you get internet cell service on there. So you want to prioritize keeping your phone charged. A small first aid kit for the little cuts and scratches. Uh, a cut that goes untreated, left unbandaged, if you don't put any kind of antibiotic on it, can get infected. An infection needs to be treated and dealt with at possibly an emergency room where you don't want to go. So do what you can to deal with those. In the Go kits also maybe have moleskin because blister can become debilitating very quickly. And if you can deal with that first aid kit, you're possibly saving your own life or at least making things a lot easier. I've already mentioned keep it near the exit that you can grab and go if you need to in a closet under something where you can just not even think about it as you're running out the door, grab it and then keep going. Cash is going to be king here. Again, no power means no credit cards, no Venmo, no whatever else you're used to doing, but have small denominations. No more than $20 bills, ones, fives, Tens are going to be the primary bills you want to have in there, maybe a couple of 20s. Don't overdo it here. Don't put yourself in a financial risk by overcommitting to any of this preparedness stuff. There's all sorts of recommendations on how much money to have in there, but it's up to you how much you can afford to invest in your own preparedness. Do it over time. You have a couple extra bucks, throw it in your emergency kit, in your go bag. But also realize that if this go bag is right next to the door and somebody breaks into your home, chances are they're stealing it. They're taking it with them. And if you have $1,000 in cash in there, that's $1,000 that just walked out the door. It's also important to have your important documents on an encrypted USB drive. Again, if your bag gets stolen, and it may not be out of your home, but when you're outside the home, if you have it with you, a bag is very easy to grab and walk away with. And if you have sensitive documents, birth certificates in there, things with social security numbers on, insurance forms, and somebody can just plug it in their computer and access it, that is going to be a good way for identity theft to happen. A flashlight, whistle, and two-way radio should also be in your bag. The stay-at-home kit, you want to target about a week's worth of supplies here. Have like a stackable bin, storage bin. You can store the stuff in. Bigger, you can put more stuff in it. And have it in an easily accessible location, which won't have things falling on it. If you need to go dig it out, and you need a crowbar to do that, and the crowbar's in the stay-at-home kit, you're gonna have some problems here. But you're gonna have to be creative with your own home, figuring out where you can put this and keep it. The stay-at-home kit is gonna be secondary to the go bag. Build your go bag first. You're gonna have stuff in your go bag that you're gonna access. But if you now have more room and more that you can allocate, more resources you can allocate to this, that's when you start building the stay-at-home kit. Keep it organized. After the earthquake, everything is going to be a mess. Your life is going to be a mess. Your home is going to be a mess. And when you open your kit and everything is nice and organized and there's some order to it, it's going to be reassuring and calming. This is also where you can have a larger first aid kit, emergency medications if you're on blood pressure medications, heart medications, insulin, other things. Try and have a week's worth of medications here, and certainly at least 3 days in your go bag as well. If there needs to be, if you're insulin dependent and that insulin needs to be refrigerated, um, having a bag in there, a insulated bag that you can throw a ice pack into and throw your insulin into is going to have you be a lot better than not having that option. Camping gear is a great idea to store in here. If you need to set up a tent in the backyard, sleeping bags, um, a lantern, a camping stove, stuff like that, having it easily accessible when you need it, right when everything else is a mess, it's going to be calming. Just having that stuff available to you. Also have a little bit of food and water in here as well. You're going to be home, hopefully, and you'll be able to access your pantry. But I also said that this should be in a stackable container that you can then grab and throw in the back of your car or vehicle. And if you have some water and food in there and a way to cook it and boil it, then you're going to be that much better off being able to quickly take this with you. Communications. Now, I saved this kind of for last because we're kind of at an interesting inflection point here. Um, 5 years ago, cell phone networks, your cell phone network goes down, and they will go down. You're not going to be able to communicate. It's going to take a while to get that back up and running. Internet goes down, chances are it will be down. Um, The satellite communication technology is becoming very advanced. Um, I don't want to get into politics, but Starlink has led the innovation here. And AT&T, Verizon, Amazon, they're all focused on this now, getting low Earth orbit satellites up into mesh grids that can cover everything when cell phone networks are down. T-Mobile right now has a viable and affordable, reasonably, um, satellite to cell or cell to satellite to cell system partnership with Starlink. And you can get it even if you're not on T-Mobile. They went live with it earlier this year. They're out of beta now, and you can go and sign up. I think if you have another provider, AT&T or Verizon, you can still get the T-Mobile satellite. It's an eSIM that goes on your phone, and that will be able to connect you when there's no cell coverage. If you're in the middle of nowhere camping, if you're um, there's been a disaster, this may be a lifesaver. This, over the next few years, will develop rapidly. And right now, you might just be able to send a text message, but T-Mobile's actually turning on data, iPhones and iMessage, Google Maps. It's all coming online in the next couple of months. I think this is a great thing and worthwhile investment, $15 a month to have cell coverage when the cell phone networks are down. Um, but again, it's up to you. Um, I don't see AT&T and Verizon coming to this level anytime soon. I could be wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong. But there's also no contract. You're not signing a 3-year contract with T-Mobile to get the service. It's month to month. And certainly, if you get, say, a Starlink mobile roaming dish, you can have internet from your car or campsite when everything else is down. And it's constantly changing. It used to be $50 a month for 50 gigs of data. And you could pause it at any time and turn it back on at any time. Now Starlink has moved to what they call standby mode, which they require you to pay $5 a month. And you can't pause it, but you get unlimited half a meg of data um, up and down. And that's enough to send messages on um, Signal or WhatsApp or Instagram, Facebook. You can even watch low quality video on it, listen to music and podcasts. Um, and that's $5 a month if you have line of sight to the sky. So the technology is advancing very rapidly, and it will be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. But this technology would have cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a month just a few years ago. So we're really at a point where this communication is, and again, your cell phone is going to be your lifeline here. Having this kind of coverage, this is how you're going to get alerts. This is how you're going to be able to let p family members know that you're safe or find out where points of distribution are going to be set up, where you can get help, where which hospitals are open and available. And this is while the grid is down. Two-way radio is still going to be a great method of communicating with family and neighbors and much more intuitive than using a cell phone. But again, you need to keep your cell phone charged, and a two-way radio is probably going to last longer and than your cell phone will. The old adage was plain old telephone lines are going to be powered by the utility and much more stable than a cable line or other internet. But AT&T does not want to maintain that, and they are fighting tooth and nail to get rid of the plain old telephone lines. I would not count on your landline service actually functioning after an earthquake. Um, but going back to the cell phone, this is why it is so important to have that battery backup. You can get if you have an EV, an electric vehicle, and you can charge it every day at home. It used to be that they said keep it at no more than 80%. That's if it's sitting days on end without using it. But if you're commuting to work every day, a lot of the EVs, you can charge them to 100% every single day as long as you're using them. They can reverse power things now. You can run your refrigerator off your car. You can certainly charge your cell phone off your car. If you have a generator, you can use propane or fuel or gasoline to power your generator and keep your refrigerator up and running, but also keep your cell phones charged. Charge your flashlights. Make sure that you have these important tools available to you when you need them. And going back to that question about how do you know what channel your neighborhood's on, talk to your neighbors. Come up with a plan ahead of time. Because after, if everyone has a ham radio and you're trying to figure out what frequency people are going to be on, that's not the time to figure it out. Family radio service, pick a channel, practice with it. Talk to your neighbors, see how good communication is. How far can you communicate with your FRS radios? Ahead of time. Plan, prepare, and train. Plan, prepare, and train. As I mentioned when I put out the Eventbrite, most people are not going to be prepared. They don't want to be. It's too overwhelming. And if you're not prepared, people will panic. Um, Panic makes people do stupid, desperate, or unsafe things, and that is going to get them hurt or possibly killed. Um, you have a much greater chance of getting injured or killed after the earthquake because of stupid decisions, because of panic decisions, because you're doing things unsafe. And if you plan, train, and prepare ahead of time, that's going to introduce calmness and the ability to think things through. If you think about possible scenarios ahead of time and figure out how would I do this? I say it's fun to play the what if game. You're walking along. What if there's a zombie outbreak and there's 100 zombies running down the street at me? What am I going to do right here, right now? Where am I going to go? What's my next course of action? Yeah, chances are there's not going to be a zombie apocalypse. Chances are the plans that you make will never actually come to fruition. The event, the disaster that you can think of will not happen in that exact way. But it's the thinking, the what ifs. What will I do if I'm in this scenario? That will get your brain working in a way that when the actual disaster occurs and it is nothing that you planned for, you're going to be able to think through more calmly and more succinctly than the people who have never thought about this and never wanted to think about this. Um, if you haven't yet, take the Community Emergency Response Team training. It's taught but for free, um, across the United States, across the world. Find out where your local program is, take the training. They go through a lot of things that you would never thought about and that you need to for these kinds of disasters. Take first aid training. It's not just good enough to have a first aid kit. You need to know how to use it. If you have an injured child, what are you going to do to take care of your child and mitigate the injury so it doesn't get worse? And then you have to take your kid to the ER or worse yourself. Start talking with your family first. What's the plan? If we need to evacuate, what is the plan? If there's a fire in the middle of the house and the main hallway is on fire, how are you getting out? No one's running through the main hallway or they're gonna burn and possibly die. Certainly they're gonna asphyxiate on the smoke. They're gonna have to go out another way. What's the plan here? Talk to your neighbors. What's the plan if there's an earthquake? If we have a map your neighborhood or ready your LA neighborhood group set up, what's the plan? Where are we going for the gathering site? Who is going to take the injured, the scared? How are we going to organize and deploy? And then talk to people who are CERT trained in your neighborhood. Start setting up teams, start planning the staging areas and response plans. This is stuff you need to do ahead of time, not after the earthquake. Our YouTube channel, if you search for LAFD CERT coordinators, has all of our previous presentations. Most of them are under the live section. I just don't have time to edit them and clean them up. But watch our previous presentations, and then every third Wednesday of the month we do these presentations, and they stream live on YouTube. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at lafdcertcentral@gmail.com. All right. So, as I figure out how to stop sharing, take any questions. Go ahead and raise your hand. Chin, were there any questions in the chat that you want to bring up or still need to be addressed?
No, actually, it seemed I had fun answering a lot of the questions, and you even answered some of the questions, like the FRS question. I said the exact same thing. That's something you have to plan with your community, and figure out what channel works for you. So it's like I think a lot of questions have been asked here, but I think you've covered a lot of it. There are some great suggestions here. Our Carrie Finch, who comes out of the Valley, know her well from the call out team. She says a quick tip to monitor frozen food thawing. This is good for disasters and brownouts. Take a clear plastic cup. Put about 3/4 inch of water in it. Freeze the water evenly in the cup. Once it's frozen, put a quarter on top. A quarter, little coin there. When the power comes back, if the ice melts, the quarter will drop down into the water and will drop down the water and continue to stay on top of the ice. If your quarter is not at the bottom of the cup, your food did not completely thaw. If your quarter is at the bottom of the cup, the food has completely thawed. This can help avoid eating bad food or throwing out good food. That's a pretty good one. I like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. That's a cool idea.
Yeah. And everything's pretty straightforward here in this chat. I would suggest to anybody out there, if you do have a question that maybe we missed from the top, and I don't think there's any, raise your hand and let us know. Raise your hand for seconds.
And then Chin, did you have anything you wanted to add? Any tips or tricks or just things I might have missed?
Not really that much to add. It's like I see Carrie is up there, and Carrie will get you right after I'm done. The best thing I can say to everybody is something that's been said here and is said all the time. Start this planning now, because the morning of a disaster, you're already out of business. So do this while you can. And so many people don't do that. And, we had questions in the chat about how do you treat your pets, when you prepare for them. Of course, you treat them like a member of the family. Get all of that stuff taken care of now before you have to. Too many times. And we saw this during the fires of during the Palisades fire. A lot of people had to evacuate on the fly. Some of them were disaster trained people, and even they still got very caught, with their pants down and left without equipment, go bags. I think that somebody even told me that they had their go bag next to the door, but accidentally grabbed the dirty underwear hamper.
Uh-huh.
It's like that one was pretty entertaining. But you want to make sure that you have everything done before you have to. So when you leave, you're able to do it seamlessly. And by the way, sometimes disaster training is simply training that lets you know when to retreat. Like in our fire burn areas, we learned during the Palisades fire that, for the most part, for those people directly in the Palisades, getting out of there immediately would have really benefited them. A lot of people though hung around and they didn't have that communication with their neighbors and they couldn't get messages from authorities and they just stayed late and it just happened. So I don't want to rattle too long with stuff we know and stuff we need to go on and practice. Carrie Finch, my friend from the
Yeah,
Valley,
just one
come
one
on
thing
up.
I did read on the
Ah,
chat, and I have it on good authority that when the power's out, ice cream has no calories. So it's the first thing you should eat out of your freezer.
I can be down with that.
Yeah.
Carrie Finch.
Hey everyone. Just a couple quick tips of things that I've done some disaster presentations for people. It's outside of CERT, but we do them kind of in a fun way. So sometimes people will say to me, Carrie, why do you have so many batteries? Because they're great for bartering. If
Hmm.
there's a disaster, you can use those. You want to think about things that people need more so than just money. The other one is yes, keep the money, but you want small bills because you'll pay $20 for a bottle of water if that's the smallest bill that you have. So we used to all plan on I have $100 bill because if there's an emergency, no, don't do that anymore. Keep your small bills, your go kits. Somebody pointed out to me one time I got a toddler in one arm. Then have your go kits on wheels. I don't care if you're single. I am. I have my a lot of my stuff in a wheelie duffel bags. If you're a family, go buy a trash can on wheels and keep that at the front of your garage. Fill up the trash can on wheels. Just think outside the box. I know it's outdated, but there is a 21 weeks to preparedness PDF that the Red Cross put out. Patrick shaking his head, so you know what I'm talking about. Gives you about five items to 7 items to buy per week. I'm in the process of updating mine because I've got to do a presentation for about 100 people in November. But it's pre-pandemic, so just think about what things you needed during the pandemic that it doesn't include if you decide to use it, like a couple extra 4 packs of toilet paper. Anyway, thanks for letting me talk. These were just a couple things that people seem to really take away from when I do my presentations, and I thought you guys might enjoy. So thanks again. I absolutely appreciate Patrick Chin. Big hugs.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie.
And,
There's
and and you know what, Patrick, before you go further, I want to dovetail off of that and say, um, I said it in the chat to everybody. Another thing that could make you a kingmaker, actually a couple more things that can make you a kingmaker, toilet paper. We talked a lot about hygiene and different ways to make yourself feel better. Remember, we're going to have a hard time because all of our creature comforts and basic necessities are going to be out of service. So in your neighborhood, having toilet paper could make you a kingmaker, and also and something Patrick always talks about too, the food exchange. You might have lots of one food. Like I said, I'm the tuna fish guy. After day number two, I'm going to be very much done with that. Maybe I want to walk across the street and trade some cans off for, Dinty more. I don't know, but those things can also make for good trading in the community. Great discussion right there. I see Patty Nagy over there has a question
Yeah,
or a
I would
comment.
actually I would recommend in your go bag have a roll of toilet paper. It can be used as tissues, it can be used for a lot of different things. And certainly if you need to use the restroom and there's no toilet paper, you're gonna really, really appreciate having it.
And Patty Nagy, go ahead.
There we go. Okay, thank you. That was great, Patrick, and all your input, Chin. I was after the Northridge earthquake. My husband and I and my son are all CERT members, and we did our block and a half another block, checked everybody out. But probably the best thing that we thought we did was after a little bit was to go to the local grocery store just a few blocks away and offer to help. And there were a number of us there, certain members who were willing to do that. So we helped them clean up the aisles. And it's amazing how slippery the salad dressing aisle is because it's all oil based. And, after we cleaned it, we did slide a little bit on it. But some people got the wine and spirits aisle, and they were a little high as they came out. But we got it cleaned up probably in about 2 hours with the store employees who were there. And we were able then to help them open up to the rest of the neighborhood, which Patrick mentioned. There will be a herd of people trying to get in to buy their batteries and their water and their toilet paper. And because we were able to go there and help clean up, they opened up about 2 hours after we finished working. And they had, cleaned the floor enough so that people wouldn't slip, that kind of stuff. So that's another thing you can do with your CERT training because we were wearing our vests so they let us in.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great recommendation, especially if you have a neighborhood market that you know the employees and the staff at. And Carrie posted the link to the Red Cross 21 week shopping suggestions in the chat. Um, it's also in Spanish as well. I don't know if there's other languages, but definitely English and Spanish. All right. Any other questions, comments, editorials?
That's my line.
Yeah, well, you've been gone for the last several months, so been having to pitch in. All right. Well, if there's none, thank you all for attending. We'll be back next month, third Wednesday of the month with a another topic, and hope to see you there. Have a good night, everyone.